Chapter 20. Why do I feel so nostalgic? 20. Why do I feel so nostalgic? After considerable agony, we left the relationship. We're on our own now, and when we can bear to be honest, it's harder than we expected. We aren't going on many dates. The central heating broke down last week. The shopping is proving a hurdle. In idle moments, we find ourselves daydreaming, returning fondly to certain occasions in the concluded relationship. There was that wintry weekend by the sea. They looked adorable walking on the beach in their thick scarf. We fed the seagulls and drank cheap white wine from paper cups on the seafront and felt connected and happy. Then there was that moment on holiday in Paris, when we discovered the little Vietnamese restaurant hidden away in a side street, and became friends with the owner and her husband. Or we recall how, at a large party, we both realized we didn't particularly like the other guests. It was a special, conspiratorial moment. The two of us shoulder to shoulder, talking over what was wrong with everyone else. We're newly conscious of the charm of so many things that seemed ordinary at the time. Coming out of the supermarket and putting everything away in the fridge and the cupboards, making soup and toasted cheese and watching television on the sofa. With these thoughts in our minds, we feel weepy and tender, perhaps even tempted to call the ex again. They would, we suspect, allow us back or at least give us a hearing. What can we make of our feelings? It might be that we have realized a genuine mistake. But it's even more likely that we are in the grip of a characteristic mental habit of the newly single, facing the vertigo of independence. Nostalgia. In the mid-19th century, Britain underwent industrial and scientific revolutions that transformed old, settled ways of life, ripping apart communities, throwing people together in large and anonymous cities, and dislocating the loyalties and certainties once offered by religion. In a search for ways to soften the confusion, artists and thinkers began to imagine what a better world might look like. In certain circles, the search turned towards the past and more specifically to the perceived wisdom, coherence and contentment of the Middle Ages. While railway lines were being laid down across the land, and telegraph cables under the seas, members of the artistic class celebrated the simple, innocent communities that, they proposed, had existed in the 12th and 13th centuries. Artworks depicted handsome, uneducated but happy labourers, cheerful villagers celebrating harvests and kindly lords and ladies ministering to the deserving poor. In their version, there seemed to be no violence, alienation, fear or cruelty. No one minded not having much heating or subsisting on a meagre diet of oats and the odd chunk of lard. It was alleged that life was much easier back then, in the thatched cottages and pious stone churches. At the heart of this nostalgic attitude was a disregard for why things ever changed and might have needed to do so. For the nostalgic, the past never required alteration or development. History moved on for no sane reason. The complexities of the present moment are, in this sense, deemed accidental. They are not the tricky byproducts of a legitimate search for growth and progress away from what must have been at some level, despite the odd delightful occasion, perhaps at harvest time or on a midsummer morning, an intolerable previous arrangement. The nostalgic can't accept that the present, whatever its faults, came about because of inescapable difficulties with the past. They insist that we were once perfectly happy, then mysteriously changed everything for the worse because we forgot we had been so. Relationships can find us reasoning no less selectively. Here too, it can feel as if we must once have been content and then grew ungrateful through error and inattention. Yet in locating profound satisfaction in the past, we are crediting our earlier selves with too little acumen. The truth about what a relationship is like is best ascertained not when we are feeling low 6 months or a few years after its conclusion, but from what we must have known when we were in its midst, when we were most familiar with all the facts upon which we made our slow and deliberate decisions. The specific grounds for our dissatisfactions tend to evaporate. We edit out the rows, the botched trips, the sexual frustrations, the stubborn standoffs. The mind is squeamish. It doesn't like to entertain bad news unless there is a present danger to attend to. But knowing our amnesiac tendencies, we can be certain that profound unpleasantness must have existed, for there would otherwise have been no explanation for our decision to rip our situation apart. We would not have needed to act if things had been as gratifying as we are now nostalgically assuming they were. The portrait we are painting of the relationship is emerging not from knowledge, but from loneliness and apprehension. Furthermore, our sense of ourselves as people who could be satisfied with what was on offer is as untrue to our own nature as is the fantasy of a modern urban dweller dreaming they might find enduring happiness in a medieval wooden hut. The solution to the problem of satisfying our complicated needs is not to hallucinate that they don't exist, It is to square up to them and use all our ingenuity to devise workable solutions for them. We should trust not what we feel now in our weepy, disconsolate state, but what we must have known then. A simple guideline emerges. We must trust the decisions we took when we had the maximal information to hand upon which we made them, not when we have emotional incentives to change our minds. There were persuasive reasons, even if in our sadness we now can't remember a single one. Returning to the past would not make us content, it would merely remind us why change was so necessary. We should have the courage of our true and complex natures, and be ready to pay the full price for them.